intro.
Quickly. So I'm Marco. I'm from ZK Sync Foundation. I'm the director of the foundation that was newly set up 3 months ago.
Eli Ben Sasson, I'm co-founder and CEO at Starkware, also a member of the Starknet Foundation board. Previously did research in theoretical computer science and founding scientist of Zcash.
I'm Sandeep, founder at Polygon. I work on the Polygon ecosystem.
Hi everyone, I'm Steven. I'm co-founder and CEO at Offchain Labs. We're probably best known for being the initial builders of Arbitrum, the Arbitrum technology stack, but we also build Prism, which is the leading layer 1 Ethereum consensus client.
And I'm Elias. I'm co-founder at Kakarot ZK EVM. We're building a provable EVM engine that has the goal of proving all of EVM execution in not so long. Right, so let's get right into it. My topic of the day, I think, is a bit controversial, but I wonder what you guys think. It's about this creeping anti-L2 propaganda around this word that everyone has maybe heard. We have heard the word parasitic. So my first question is for you, Steven. Like, what makes a rollup parasitic in your view? And maybe you can start by defining parasitic, and maybe then everyone can leap in.
So I don't want to be too spicy, but I also don't want to eat a pepper. So I'm just like redoing my thoughts in my mind now. I think actually, there are definitely things that rollups can do that are parasitic, but actually a lot of the things that people say are just incorrect. If you look back, and you mentioned Vitalik's writings, but if you look back at another post that he did, which is in 2020, the rollup-centric roadmap, and you actually follow what's going on today, like the L2s are following that exactly. Like Vitalik says, it's great that L2s have their own communities. Not everyone has to be, right? We can all be part of the same country, but part of different cities or states and have overlapping interests, but actually slightly different as well. And Vitalik talks about little islands. He says it's great that L2 have their own funding mechanisms, their own tokens. And a lot of people like to come today, particularly from other ecosystems, and say, look, these guys have their own tokens, they're terrible. Or how could they all be Ethereum because they compete with each other? That's fine to have that opinion, but like we've been following a pretty clear blueprint and a pretty clear roadmap, and we've been doing a remarkable job. And I think it's an important one because we need a scale, and we need a really performant layer 1, and we need a really performant layer 2. So I don't think any of those things are parasitic, and I'm joined here by some of my close friends. Marco, I don't know you yet personally, but I'm sure we'll get to know each other. But Eli and Sandeep are some of the most fantastic builders in the space, and I don't think anyone on this stage is parasitic. I think we're all doing our own thing. We don't necessarily always agree, and we have different views. But I think we're doing our own thing to build Ethereum. The one thing that could be parasitic, which I don't think is represented here, is if you build a chain that claims to be on Ethereum but doesn't actually provide Ethereum security, doesn't actually give you the proofs from Ethereum, that could be parasitic because you're getting all the marketing, but you're actually not giving the users the benefits to Ethereum. But I think the L2s today have taken a really great direction, and we all have our own little islands, but I don't think any of us are parasitic.
I mean, I would say that just prove it by contradiction. Like just remove all the L2s from Ethereum ecosystem, and then look at Ethereum ecosystem. It is a chain with 12 or 13 TPS transactions. Do you think that the markets will value Ethereum where it is today, thinking that it's going to have 13 TPS, where most of the other L1s have like hundreds or even thousands of TPS and all that? The activity would have moved out. The fact that L2s are there and they've provided that amount of scale and opportunities for retail to participate in the DeFi ecosystem of Ethereum, because on Ethereum the gas fees tends to become too high, almost becoming prohibitive for retail. And L2s have provided those avenues where a lot of these end users who are not like whale users, who are not playing with hundreds or thousands of dollars, they can also use these trustless applications. L2s have provided that, and I would argue that if L2s were not there, Ethereum's future would be very, very in a very, very big jeopardy.
I like this contrarian view, and like this proving by opposite. Let me be contrarian for a second, because everyone seems to agree that L2s are not parasitic. How about the fact that not so long ago, most of the TVL was on Ethereum L1, and now it's migrated to various L2s. And as you mentioned, there are islands, but there is no ferry linking them. So the markets are much more shallow, and then you would say, oh, but Ethereum has 10x the TVL of Solana, but now today, if you take each individual rollup, it's been maybe made more fragile from the fact that it has maybe less TVL or volume than Solana.
So I'll continue. I also, my ultimate goal here is not to eat the red pepper. So first of all, I just want to say that parasites are, wrongfully trashed because if you think about it, like we as, our human body is full of things that probably started off as parasites, but now they are in symbiosis and we cannot live without them. So, the thing that generates power inside each of our cells, they're called mitochondria. They started off as probably parasitic bacteria that entered some other cell. Same thing with the microbiome in our guts and on our skin. So there's this fine line between parasites and or parasitic behavior and symbiosis that always exists. Now it doesn't mean some parasites are really bad and some and you can go either way. I don't want to go into biology, but all I'm saying is that there's a very large spectrum here that even if someone comes in with parasitic intentions, they don't end up necessarily, ending up parasitic. So with this going from biology to the world of blockchains, I would say this. We're very early in the game, very early. All of crypto, all of it, between Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, everyone else, the L2s, a very tiny fraction of humanity is currently using blockchains for anything. And we still have a very long way to go, which means that we need to experiment and explore and connect things, as much as we can and offer a higher scale and more connectivity and more things. So now what will end up capturing which parts of value? Honestly, I don't know. But, when I co-founded Starkware, this was around almost 7 years ago, and we had to bring on the very first people, I said something that I believed then, and I still believe today, and it applies also to blockchain. I said this was about the particular, ZK Stark technology that we invented and we're going about to commercialize. I said, I have no doubt that it will transform the world and will be ubiquitous and everyone will use it. I don't know if necessarily we will be the ones ending up monetizing it, but the most important resource we all have is our time and where we choose to spend it. And I have no doubt, again, that spending time on advancing this technology makes a lot of sense. And we will look back at this most scarce and important resource that we have, our time, and not be ashamed of what we did. The same thing applies to blockchain with all its L2s and so on. So I've never gone into this, not on Twitter or elsewhere. I've never gone into this debate of parasitic or not parasitic. I think we're just too early. We're all exploring together. I don't know who's going to capture the value at the end. I hope it's us, but it doesn't really matter all that much. There's this bigger thing that we're all exploring and experimenting with.
I very much like the analogy with the parasites that become actually beneficial. And this is something we see very often, that thanks to markets, very often you come into a system with a specific tendency, but then you co-evolve with the system and eventually you become something else. I think one reason why people think about parasitic is kind of like a misunderstanding is that whenever someone like us invents something new that drops a cost or an attrition by 1 or 2 scale of magnitude, this creates changes that do impact a portion of the ecosystem in a way that wasn't really intended. Like, for example, the revenue of Ethereum have gone down. And this is really not by design. The design is that with, say, average cost down 100x, there's going to be new applications that are going to be built that will take over most of this, revenues that are not paid today. You mentioned the TVL. Maybe it's also true. I don't even know if the total TVL denominated in Ethereum, so taking over market effect, reduced on Ether on layer 1. It definitely increased overall, I think, in Ether, but I don't know if it reduced on layer 1. But again, this could be just a temporary thing. I think ultimately what Yoeli said, there's a very tiny fraction of the world that is on chain, and if we think that this is the end game, then there's a problem. If we just attract 0.001% of any of the established Web2 industries, we can 10x the TVL, the revenue of layer 1, the TPS, everything.
Okay, thanks. I agree on all of this.
Who gets the pepper so far?
We do 1 pepper per question.
No.
With this. I'm fine.
I want to know how bad we're ranked.
Who's courageous to vote for the motion? Someone should argue.
Everyone
for
has
the
to
party.
vote. I think this is decentralization. It's the
Need a
great
live
segue.
scoreboard.
In order to save myself from the pepper, I want to have a very spicy take, is that there is no other architecture except the L2 architecture that makes sense long term. Like I have said previously also that, I mean, even though I respect a lot of L1s, like which are, trying to have like high amount of TPS on their single chains, but long term they are not sustainable. They have to go to the layer 2, and you are already seeing that in some of those like high TPS blockchains also, the successful apps there are trying to launch their own L2. So there is no other architecture that can actually exist. So parasitic or not, this is the only way to go.
Okay.
Pepper free.
I will say this. Pepper free. All right. So everyone will vote. I think it will be fun here. We can do anonymous voting, commit reveal.
I wonder if the moderator also gets to eat. If
I've been told I can.
Yes. Yeah.
I can be nominated. Please don't collude. So we'll all vote together, and this ties into decentralization. I don't know if you saw, but Vitalik tweeted that we need to take off training wheels. This is what has been called on the concept of compromises when it comes to security or decentralization. So most L2s right now are sequenced. The blocks are sequenced by a centralized actor, and soon it won't be the case anymore. So I think we can touch a bit about this because ZK Sync tweeted about it. Polygon has a roadmap for decentralization, and Eli, Starknet had just introduced staking and soon decentralization. I'm not too aware of the roadmap of Arbitrum, but Arbitrum has been the first L2 to be called Stage 1. So for those who don't know, L2Bit is an organism that gives kind of grades on the amount of decentralization or security of L2s. And there is a taxonomy like stage 0, stage 1, stage 2. And stage 0 is training wheels, not so decentralized. Stage 1 is reasonably decentralized, and stage 2 is finally decentralized. So yeah, I think I can ask many questions, but maybe something more concrete at first, and then we can go into philosophy on when to decentralize. But I think what's interesting is, what do you think this differentiates a L2 block proposer from an L1 block proposer? And how do you factor in this difference when it comes to rollups?
I think the roles of L2 and L1, I think that one of the mistakes that people make is that they think that we should take the L1 architecture and impose it directly on the L2. In fact, though, there are certain things that we're able to do on the L2 because we have the L1 underneath us, right? So L2, right? Take any of our protocols. So take an optimistic world like Arbitrum. It only needs one single honest validator. Now you might say, how do you get around the result and consensus that you need an honest, a super majority honest or an honest majority? And the answer is because it doesn't have its own consensus. It actually uses Ethereum underneath it. So I think one of the mistakes that some people make is that they assume the L1 block proposer, the L2 have to be the same. Actually, it's okay to have a little more centralization in L2 as part of the roadmap, and that's how you get some of the benefits. And that's not controversial. That's not hopefully it's a little controversial, so don't get a pepper, but it's not too controversial. The fact that the L2 can be slightly more centralized, and I think that works well with the stage 0, stage 1, stage 2 roadmap as well.
And I agree.
That's the whole.
Please, no, go ahead.
Yeah, that's the whole point of L2 is also that the scalability trilemma, that decentralizations, scalability and security you can choose to, and on layer 2s basically you try to achieve more scale by compromising a little bit of decentralization, and while still keeping it completely trustless, and people don't have to trust the sequencer. And I think obviously Arbitrum has done a phenomenal job. I think Arbitrum is the only rollup today, Arbitrum 1, which can really claim to be stage 1. And it has billions of dollars of liquidity, and it's pretty safe for the end users. And I think that's the fundamental trade-off L2s make. One thing that Arbitrum 1 has done really well is that they have combined these two things, providing the security and the trustlessness, part of the L2, while also having a very amazing UX, with 250 to 400 millisecond, confirmation, soft confirmation time for the users. For example, Polygon, we built the ZK rollups, right? So ZK rollups are kind of they are late entrants into the game. So for us, the priority right now is And I think that for the last whole year, this has been a big debate in the Ethereum ecosystem that Ethereum ecosystem stopped focusing on the UX and was focusing more on these alignments and technical correctness. And I think like the first version of our ZK EVM was extremely technically correct, but then for the end user experience, it was not that great. So we are trying to perfect that user experience first on that, and then we'll worry about the stage 1, stage 2 things later on. So maybe for ZK rollups, the training wheels are going to take a little bit more time. Yeah.
And yeah, I wanted to say, I mean, I think what you started with, no, Elias, that at the end of the day, the layer 1, layer 2 do two different jobs, and so it makes sense that they may be optimized for two different frameworks. So on the layer 1 provides the centralization, security. Layer 2 provides security and scaling, and so the size of the number of validator, the requirement in terms of hardware of each validator, they don't necessarily need to be the same. I think as Steve said, now one mistake is potentially just say, oh, this is good, so we should copy, and if we don't, there's some strange behavior, and instead I don't. I think there's going to be a lot of differentiation here. But one thing I want to say is I really applaud what Vitalik started, and it's something that we should all kind of pushing much more for. No, the fact that it's great to have proliferation of layer 2, 100, 200, 1,000, wonderful, as long as they are innovative and as long as they are not claiming to be a layer 2 and they're not. And I think this is, I mean, I don't want to say things on behalf of L2Bit, but I think this is one of their key role, to make sure they keep people real. And the stage 1, stage 2, and maybe later we'll get a stage 3, and I'm sure we will get more stuff that needs to be figured out. It's very, very important. Because we saw this panning out on layer 1s, this like proliferation, and that's parasitic, by the way. But
I often use this motto, speak softly and deliver code. So when we set out to build Starknet, we said there are going to be 3 phases. First functionality, then performance, then decentralization. Functionality meant, building Cairo, native account abstraction, making it usable by developers. We're now, I'd say, towards the end of performance. The next upgrade, we just did one upgrade, and that reached the 2-second confirmation time and 250 or more TPS, and we'll 4x that roughly with the next release. And then we'll move on to focus on decentralization. So version 14 that will come out, I think, either Q1 or Q2, will already have mempool and fee markets and things like that. And then we'll shift our focus from performance to decentralization, which, we take very, very seriously, as will be evident by the actions and releases, so that we do reach, proof of stake based L2, which will in some way be similar to L1 in being, proof of stake based decentralized, and then probably in other ways different. And we like to think about things from first principles and do the best job we can with all the information we have. But details will emerge as we get there.
I want to just, following something on which Sandeep and Ellie said, which is they decided that, which is a very reasonable roadmap it's okay to be stage 0 or whatever for a little bit longer because they want to prioritize other things first and the decentralization will come. I think that's actually a really, for certain projects, a really good approach. And I think one of the dangers of Vitalik's, of just going in this like stage thing is here you have 2 very responsible actors that are saying, we're not ready to take off the training wheels yet, and that's okay. We're not prioritizing that yet. We're okay to be stage 0, and that's great because they're actually protecting their users. But the problem is if you take that, framework to its extreme, is you'll have actors that are less responsible that are like, let's just take off the training wheels because we would just want to get the points, and like the users will actually fail. So I actually think that the correct framework should be slightly different, which is it should be the stage 1, stage 2 framework, but also with like public audits and the like to make sure that if Sandeep and Ellie are like responsible and want to protect their users, but there might be someone that's like, hey, we're just going to take the training wheels off because we want to get a higher designation and let the users fall. We don't really care if they don't know how to ride the bike yet. So I think you have to be careful there because not everyone's going to be that good actor. So you have to have 2 things. Number 1, take the training wheels off. Number 2, you demonstrated publicly that that was a responsible thing to do.
I wonder who you're referring to. I just want to save you from taking a bite from the peppers.
I think you got that.
If he doesn't name, then he has to take a. He has to name it.
You cannot add more rules without consensus, sir.
We
All
only
right.
need one honest validator to get rid of those rules. So I challenge.
I guess, and speaking for L2B, they're not here, or maybe they are, but they are also doing the public auditing thing, right? They call out people who have, they go through the code actually of the verifiers or the settlement system, and they call out when things are wrong. I think that's
Yeah, they are great. They do a really fantastic job, and it's a thankless job and one that like we should all be thankful for, and also make sure they have good funding to do their neutral work.
But it is very important that whenever people, I mean, this is not just something that people just try to jump a bunch of hoops and then end up into a situation that is worse than actually being clearly not ready, you know. And so L2B takes a very careful approach, but I'm sure we can all help them out to make it stronger and more effective.
okay. So decentralization done, parasitic done. I want to touch a bit on this idea that the islands are not connected and the sub-ecosystem of L2s are somewhat fragmented. And there are some efforts to create more aggregation, either through ZK, but also other ways by messaging and so on. I can ask one short question, maybe Steven. Like, I saw some effort from Elastic Chain from ZK Sync aggregation layer. Starkware has had Sharp, which is a shared prover for a long time. Is there a plan for Orbit chains to be connected by a proprietary, not proprietary in the sense of closed source, but homemade protocol, or are you counting more on the existing protocols of message passing to connect the Orbit chains or Arbitrum?
Yeah, so the answer is yes, and I'll talk about a few things. So number one is what we call fast withdrawals, which we've announced, and I think it's shipping in in a couple of days, which is ways for different orbit chains to get away from out of the 7-day settlement time if they're using particular types of antitrust technology. But also we've talked about things called chain clusters, the idea that you can cluster two chains together and get fast settlement time between them. It's a pros and cons. The chains have dependencies. Those dependencies means they need to trust each other and trust each other's code, but they can get better interop. And also generally, we've partnered with, for example, Espresso Systems to build, help them their decentralized marketplace, and I know you guys have partnered with them as well. But actually, and this is a bit of maybe a hot take, which is on the one hand, yes, we are building and will build and continue to build great technology to connect Arbitrum chains when that's technically necessary, right? So when there are technical opportunities that, hey, because there are two Arbitrum chains, you can connect them more better than you could to other chains, we're going to build that technology, and we have built that technology with fast withdrawals of chain clusters. But when there are opportunities to say, hey, can we connect to a Polygon, a chain on the AG layer, or a chain Starkware or ZK Sync, can we connect there as well? We're not going to say hey, it's because it's not an Arbitrum chain, we don't want to build that technology. The best technology that we can build is actually one that connects not Arbitrum, but connects Ethereum. And that's why actually we partnered with Espresso. We could have built it ourselves, but we said, no, if I build it myself, what are the chances that Sandeep's going to sign on? And also, well, maybe Sandeep, but others, what are the chances that they'll sign on and say, we'll use this technology? You need neutral technology partners that build that, and that's why we want to support those as well. So yes, when there's a technical reason to connect Arbitrum chains better, and there are, chain clusters, fast withdrawals, we're going to build those. But when there are ways that we can connect all of our chains together and not connect Arbitrum, but connect Ethereum, that's really the goal.
Okay. Then I have a bit of a naive question on Elastic Chain and AgLayer, which is that take a world where you have real-time proving and that you can settle a proof on L1 of many rollups that gets aggregated every 30 seconds. What is the benefit of having a aggregation layer when L1 could be your aggregation layer?
There is, Sandeep, so there is two components of the interoperability. One is the shared bridge, and the other is the aggregator of the proofs. So the shared bridge is probably still required if you want to exchange value across chain in a very cheap way. Otherwise, you have the settlement cost on layer one all the time, and this maybe can be solved in a million other ways. But one way is this interoperability layer. The benefit of the aggregation of the proofs, and here I'm not a technical person, so maybe I'm saying some hot takes that will get me free from the spicy pepper. But so one reason could be that, at least in the ZK Sync design, we net the state changes, in every block. So if you aggregate this across multiple chains, you may get benefit in terms of reduction in cost that come also with maybe an improved interoperability. But ultimately, I think it's really the experimentation. I mean, I think what Ali said before, we don't really know exactly where the technology will land in 3 months or 12 months. This is an interesting design that we need to push to the very end and see whether it's needed or not, whether it's needed globally, whether it's needed locally, whether a subcluster of chain needs to share stuff within something like the Elastic Chain or Ag layer, or whether none does, or whether everybody ends up into something like this.
Yeah. So to understand this, maybe let's do an exercise. You're saying like 30 seconds, right? So imagine you are on chain A and you wanted to do a transaction which is a round trip transaction. You want to take a loan on chain B and then bring back. Let's say you had ETH, you want to loan or you want to lend or borrow USDT on chain B on chain A, right? So you go from chain A to chain B, borrow USDT from ETH, bring back the USDT. This is a round trip, right? How much time it takes? It takes like the chain A, you do a transaction, that chain submits 30 seconds, you're saying, if it can submit the proof. 30 seconds submits the proof. Now the chain B picks up, there is another transaction that happens, and then that chain submits the proof 30 seconds later, and then the chain A. So its overall round trip is like one minute something. User experience wise, not sure if it's like, this is still a fairly big transaction. Imagine it was a game. You were buying an NFT. It takes one and a half minute for that. That's not a really great experience. But so 30 seconds probably high, very high, right? Like let's assume 5 seconds. You are saying that we could have probably 5-second, proof submission and all that. Now, if we think that Web3 will really achieve like internet scale, like that's all we are hoping, right? That's why we are all here. Then how many chains you expect, how many these execution environments you expect the world will have? Like compared to, let's say, Web 2, how many application servers you think in the world are today? Like, like for example, mobile apps itself, I think we have around combined iOS and Android combined, we have like around 7 or 8 million apps. And this does not include web apps and does not include websites, right? And all those things. So probably 20-30 million. Assume that Web3 achieves any kind of scale, it will be like 1 million chains. Like it should achieve in 10 years. 1 million chains mean 1 million execution environments for decently successful apps. You can even let's say reduce half, which are meaningful, like 500K. Now 500K chains submitting proof every 5 seconds, right? Which means every 1 second, even if you kind of like round robin them, every chain is submitting, like every second you are having a 125K submissions on L1. Is that
implying you aggregate them?
Huh?
Implying you aggregate them.
No. In your case, you are saying L1 is the aggregator. So there's nothing aggregation, no step of aggregation in between, right? That's the whole point of Ag layer.
No, I was saying you aggregate the proofs, but you don't use them for like composability. You just aggregate proofs.
Yeah, but then somebody is going to aggregate, right? You have to rely on some third party to aggregate those proofs, right?
Yes.
So that's the whole point, like of these aggregation layers. Then,
okay, so in my mind there is two functions of an aggregation layer, such as Ag layer, Elastic Chain, or Sharp, is to aggregate proofs such to reduce the verification cost of your proof on L1, and second is composability between chains that want to settle proofs. Yeah. And the main difference between the Starkware shared prover is that it aggregates thousands of transactions together, but doesn't use it to do interop between Starknet app chains. Whereas in the design of Elastic Chain and Ag layer, you are also using it for messaging. Yeah. So I was wondering, what is the value add of messaging through Ag layer versus messaging through L1 itself?
I think, I mean, I don't want to answer for you, but I think there's a technical piece here, which is L1 finality time is something we have to contend with as well, right? So there could be an L1 reorg, and so the fact, even if you have instant proving, real-time instant proving, you can't really use that for composability unless there's someone else that's going to make that promise well that can actually deal with an L1 reorg, because what happens now is you thought you had composability, but now there's a reorg, and now those proofs, now I submit a different set of proofs that are also valid, but for a different set of transactions because there was not finality on the set on L1. So I don't know much about like And I'll leave you guys to debate this. I don't know about the different designs, but that's the issue I see with even if you have the best real-time proving, you're still going to have to contend with finality, which today is like 12 to 18 minutes. There's no real path to get it like real time. Like even if you can,
And
Exactly.
I would
I mean, that's a
sorry, no, I would almost flip the question. No, so you have this proof that is settling somewhere in a very fast way. While it's being aggregated, why not using it also for messaging? So I will almost flip the question. No, instead of why do we do it, why wouldn't you do it if it's possible to do it and if you give some advantage?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you have to.
You want.
Like, do you agree that L1 is your state of truth? Like so you can broadcast this proof, but for me to trust it, I need to be assured that it will end up on L1 somehow.
But that's up to you, right? So if it's up to the million chains that are connected to decide. I want to wait for final settlement 18 minutes after the final aggregated proof settled on Ethereum because I'm transferring $1 billion, or if it's a game, maybe I don't. I take this intermediate proof that maybe can be reorged, maybe can be something is not super optimal, but it's very, very fast. And for my UX is more important than the security in this case.
Okay.
I would say this optional state where you can do it but don't have to do it. Why not?
Okay.
I can say something. Well, to avoid the pepper, I'll say, why not have the messaging? So, as you mentioned, so on our framework, we've been operating Sharp for more than 3 years. So it's a form of aggregation that basically takes together several different systems. And this has been running in production for, 3 or 4 years. And to answer the question, why don't we have messaging? I would say that it takes time to build things. And you need to have, so when we originally started this several years ago, the systems that we had operating were perfectly fine using the L1 messaging. So, it's similar to, why don't we have seamless interoperability across, let's say, between Bitcoin and, and Ethereum and Solana and like with one wallet and everything. Well, everyone would love to have that experience. It's just very, very hard to build it. So when you come...
But some of it is like almost... I mean, again, I don't want to have a debate on the technical aspects with you, but some of it is fundamentally not possible. Like when you don't share zone of sovereignty, this kind of interoperability between ZK Sync or Starkware and Solana, it's like something that cannot be done. No, but if it can be done, it makes sense that someone builds it and then you let this, again, market-based, someone, at the end of the day, is for developer and user to pick that design that is most useful. And actually, my take almost all the time is that you will have non-homogeneity in this. There will be classes of application that will want to settle on layer 1, a class that will want to settle on layer 2, a class that can trust interoperability even if it's not trustless with Solana. I think it's fine. I know it really depends on the application, the use case.
Yeah, but when all is said and done, like you have multiple systems, and from the user's point of view, it will all be abstracted away and basically, seamless. Like I'm sure that the internet has a whole bunch of completely different systems that are operated by different entities and so on. And still, with most applications, if you go and access the internet, you have this very seamless, homogeneous feeling of, and at some point it will converge to that. It just takes time to build it.
Great.
All right. You mentioned, Marco, I'm going to ask a question to Eli, but I'm going to bounce off something that you said. Sometimes you get a new order of magnitude improvement in something, and it unlocks a whole new world. And I wanted to ask Eli, you guys are going to release a prover next year, and you believe that it will, the new scale of proving speed will enable real-time proving. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And what do you think is unlocked from today, where we have 8-hour latency for proof? I will say 1 hour because 8 hours is a choice, but 1 hour latency to 10 seconds. What is unlocked?
So some of the things I saw mentioned coming from, for instance, the Ethereum Foundation research team, which I really liked. One of them is that you could have, and you also mentioned this before when we were just talking, you could have something close to real-time proving for Ethereum blocks. You could have signature, which means that basically, I mean, right now validators have to run through, and sequence all transactions, whereas in a proof-generated one, you would just have to verify, let's say, the hash of the latest state and verify the proof, which is how things actually work on Starknet already. So you could have something similar to that being done within single blocks on Ethereum, even more so on Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has 10-minute block time. So that would be like really, really easy, and all kinds of light clients and stuff like that. That's one thing. I'm trying to think of the other really cool thing that they suggested to use Stu, like this next generation prover for. I think it was like post-quantum signature aggregation, so that you could have 10,000 or 1 million signatures being verified and aggregated by one Stu proof. Stu is our next generation prover, which will reach mainnet in Q1. So that's another thing. And well, you could have also all kinds of real-time, gaming and massively off-chain stuff, whatever, AI or gaming or stuff like that, being then pretty instantly or in near real time being proven back to the chain. And Elias, you probably have some other cool applications in mind.
I mean, we're
And
still
it's real-time proving. I think a lot of Plonky 2, Plonky 3, one of our famous library. I think we are type 1 prover. If I'm not wrong, even with a single machine, I think we are proving Ethereum blocks at 50 seconds, which is like a single machine. And we could easily have 100 of these machines, each proving single transaction, combining them. And I think we were discussing with Vitalik, I think we can easily do 20 to 30 seconds, proofs with Plonky 2, Plonky 3 right now. And I think with this, the Plonky 3 next generation, the goal is to reach somewhere below Ethereum block times. Yeah, and I think that is very much going to happen in very near time. I think a lot of teams are going to have that.
Our team is also aiming. Our team is also aiming for. Our team is also aiming for the same, exactly the same. Yeah. It's combining Stu and Kakarot to have a real-time EVM proving engine. Yeah. The question is, I actually wonder. I don't know. We're exploring the use cases. I wonder if you could cut the costs even of Infora by half, because you could create a new class of full node that instead of re-executing all of the transactions to stay at head, just receives the proof at the head of the chain and verifies it. So I wonder if you could cut the cost of Alchemy Infra and then infuse all of the wallets with verifiers, such that you also boost sovereignty of users. Although sovereignty is not rewarded, so I don't know. Genuinely don't know.
It will happen. These things are not directly valued by users. These are fundamental technology improvements which will keep happening, and once they become good enough, cheap enough, I think people will adopt them. So we don't have to force it on the users.
And I think a good note in general, history of technology, is that whenever you have something like this happening, there is the emergent nature of the system makes something new that we can't predict exactly today, but almost always true that something new comes and there's new application, new class of stuff that couldn't be done before that now can be done. So I'm always super excited whenever there is someone who's really pushing the boundary by, a scale of magnitude is a random amount, but it's usually the amount by which you get this step function in application and use cases. Without a certain bandwidth, we wouldn't have, AWS. Without AWS, we wouldn't have a lot of stuff. We would, and I think this is really, really exciting to see what we will, as a group, enable by doing all of this experimentation.
Okay, nice. We're running out of time. I guess I will leave you all with one sentence that you can say. It's to save you from the pepper. You can say the one thing you wish you would do different on your stack. So one thing you don't like, or one thing you really have to improve on your own stack. And it's if it's really spicy, then you might not get the pepper. So you can start, Marco.
So I can start. On ZK Sync, definitely the most cumbersome part is the lack of total equivalence. So if we were to do something different, we will probably prioritize this more rather than the performance implementation that we did, and maybe invert the priority of the two.
When I have a time machine, one of the first things I'll do is go back and convince the team that we should have started off with very small prime or binary modulus for the proof system rather than the large one that Stone is building on. So like we should have had something like Stu over a 32 or 64-bit field from the start, which is what I actually wanted, because in the research paper that we did before, it was actually a 64-bit binary field. But anyways, that's what I would like.
I would like us to, dial down a little bit on this, Ethereum correctness and Ethereum alignment, and more focus on user alignment and user experience.
Yeah, for us, I think that the path to integrating additional nodes, like so is a Geth-based stack, adding additional nodes is something which we didn't include at the beginning. So now we're going back and refactoring to include that, but definitely probably some more work we could have done upfront for that.
Okay, so more equivalence, more performance, more user-centric views, and more broadness of the stack.
More nodes, yeah.
I agree, but I think it's common sense. It's not spicy, so you are not saved from the pepper. So now comes the vote. Who should get the pepper?
Is there an option for everyone gets the pepper, or?
Yeah, there is an option for everyone gets a little bite of the pepper, and we, instead of taking a big bite, we all take a very small bite.
I think the moderator was not able to take out the spiciest takes from us, so it should be moderated.
Consensus.
I like that, yeah.
I am witnessing collusion. I will call on the slashing mechanisms.
If you slash the pepper, that's fine.
Okay. So we have 2 votes for sharing the pepper and 2 votes for me. And as a very, very honest actor, I will vote for sharing the pepper. We're doing
Station pepper? Jesus. Station pepper can be very bad. Maybe it's a Thai pepper. What is it? Is it Thai pepper or?
I hold Emir responsible if it's very spicy, by the way. Where is he? He said there's no Scoville index. Cheers. Yeah, cheers.
Yeah. It's quite okay, sweet.
Welcome to Singapore.
It's spicy.